Just for technical purposes.
Your spectacular moment.
Can I start now?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, welcome. My name is Hyewon Yi. I'm the director of Art Lab, and I'm in a Wallace Gallery. I'm assistant professor of art history at the Visual Art Department. Please welcome Sylvain Durand. This is a talk, Sylvain Durand, New Perspectives on the Art of Environmental Photography is hosted by Art Lab at SEJI, as well as Philosophy and History and Philosophy departments. So I thank you for your sponsorship. And before I introduce Sylvain, I would like to thank some individuals. I would like to thank Professor Sylvie Kandé for introducing Sylvain Durand and also co-organizing this exhibition with me. And I would like to thank Dominique Dominique Robin, I try to pronounce the French way, for his help with the installation, and also my intern who have been helping, and is particularly Angelika who's not here today. So let me introduce him. Sylvain Durand is well known for his unique approach to black and white nature photography. Hallmarks of his art include the use of black and white film, powerful flash, and mixing street and studio photography techniques. Sylvain Durand has exhibited in Europe and the US, notably at Boutique Hugo Boss, Yegan Gallery, and Gallery 128 in 2022. Durand has collaborated with the jazz artists Mimi Jones, Shiraze Tinin, and Camille Turman, and worked as a graphic consultant for Marco Galota, Sonia Maskovich, and Christine Johns, and Dominique Aubin. He is currently working as a retoucher and printer for Griffin Editions, photo lab that produces darkroom and digital prints for major exhibits throughout the world. He has mentioned some of the big names in the art world who own prints at this summer. The artist's talk, New Perspectives on the Art of Environmental Photography, will raise important questions about nature photography, the concept of environment, and interspecies relations in Anthropocene. So please welcome Sylvain Durand.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming in. First I would like to thank the SUNY Old Westbury, Sylvie Kandé, Hyewon Yi, and the SEJI Social Environment Justice Institute. Yeah, sorry.
Justice.
I remember SEJI, that's a good acronym. And Departement of History and Philosophy, led by Kyle Henderson. I would like also to thank the Griffin Editions team that helped me to do those big prints. Because anybody can print that, but going big needs a lot of people. So thank you to Jankauskite, producer who helped to organize the different steps, Leah Kusera for the drum scan, Sarah Adriani, the printer, Silvio Garcia and Giovanni Perez, the art handlers, and Natalia Gubinski and Kevin McCarthy, producer, that really made the shipping happen right on time. I would like to thank Dominique Robin, artist, Angelika Abejar for checking my inches map, fractional inches map. Migle Jankauskite, designer, who gave me some very good advice on how to design the poster, and Arbach, artist, who's making a movie about this thought. You know, or maybe as you guessed, I'm French, and I'm from Lyon. So Lyon is the second city right after Paris, and is the city of the brothers Lumière, who invented the fast emulsion. So that's the beginning of modern photography and film. And further north, we have Chalon-sur-Saône, where Nicéphore Nips took the first picture. So my hometown has a strong history with photography. And also that's not related to the talk, but that's the capital of gastronomy, so that's important. Yeah. So this is my father. I was introduced to photography by my father when I was 7 years old, and I wanted to borrow a camera to go on a school trip. And it took me no problem, but first you need to learn the basic of photography. So it took me, because it's expensive, every time you shoot black and white, one click, it's 2 francs, and in color it's 4 francs, which is very expensive. So like 40 years ago, I still remember the price of the photography. So, at that time I wanted to shoot color, because color was still a novelty, as a matter of fact, because I grew in a house with a black and white TV, and the color TV came later, and at that time color photography was much more expensive than black and white, so most of the people would still shoot black and white, and say, no, I don't think so. First, try to be good with black and white, and then when you're good with it, switch with color. As a matter of fact, I never switched to color. I stayed mainly on black and white. And the funny thing about my father is that he had no doubt that at 7 years old I could learn about the stop aperture. F2, 2.8, F4, 5.6, and telling me that the ratio between two stops is square root of 2, which is useless to know, but I know that, now. And the shutter speed. And he had me to train myself to juggle with that for a given light, what kind of, all the combination of stops and shutter speeds. And then after he finally gave me this camera, and I took some pictures, we had some 4x6s printed, and we went through, and he criticized all of them. So he said, that's fine, I'm going to tell you how to do better. And I don't think he found ever one of my pictures good, so I had to be really good. So at the beginning, photography was really a technical game. It was just about getting a 36 frame roll perfectly exposed. In my building, I was lucky to have a public library, which was my favorite place to be, and they had like a few photo books. Among those photo books was a book from Jean, who was a fashion photographer from the 60s, 70s, and this book was actually a book for beginner photography, and it was kind of very lazy book, because he just put some pictures with some settings as he remembered, so they were probably not even accurate. But one of the pictures really made such a strong impression on me that from that moment I thought, okay, that's gonna be my only goal in life, is to recreate the same impression from my black and white. So it was a big moment for me. And as a matter of fact, still now, as I'm talking to you, thinking about this picture, I still have goosebumps about it. It was one of the biggest artistic impressions in my life. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find the picture online, so I can just talk about it. It was his wife. It was a picture of her belly at early pregnancy, with goosebumps all over the skin, and was backlit by a window right behind. The black and white was just wonderful. So So here we go, those are still, so you probably recognize the picture on the left, that's flushing, and I think it's a pretty original angle. And then, from that moment, I really begged my father to set up a darkroom. Like every weekend I would say, Dad, please, let's set up that darkroom. And we finally did. And then from that it was like long years and painful photography because my expectations were so high. I was always kind of bad at darkroom printer, and I couldn't match what I was expecting from black and white.
And how old were you? How old were you when you were doing it?
No, sorry.
How old?
I was 8 when we set up the darkroom. And then later on, I encountered Henri Cartier-Bresson. And then I thought, oh, that's so cool, you know, this guy traveled all over the world, his photography is amazing. I wanted to be a photojournalist. Unfortunately, it wasn't an easy thing because when I was young, I was painfully shy. So even talking to people was a complete suffering and pain. So taking pictures was even harder. But somehow I really persisted in that, tried, but it was really too hard, you know. And then when I was a teenager, I went through the work of Daido Moriyama. So at that time, I had a lot of anger, you know. I was angry about the society and everything, you know. And Daido Moriyama, I found what I found in the music that I was listening at that time, which was punk music, you know, Sex Pistols, all of that. And I found this in black and white, very angry black and white, with massive grain, massive contrast. But don't be fooled by the violence of his black and white, because he was a very fine printer. He would actually snapshot. He wasn't a good photographer in that sense, because he would just like take pictures all over the street like this, and he would spend hours, if it's not a week, on one print to get it right. So then, when I was 25, I got, for the first time in my life, that's normal, make a pause, and where I actually stopped taking pictures for 6 months, and it felt extremely weird. It felt actually like missing a limb, because for years I had always my camera, always was walking like this, you know, to kind of see how the camera would see, you know, especially in black and white. And one day I saw my camera, I said, you know what, let's take my camera and I'm going to go at the extreme opposite of what I was doing. So I wanted to be a photojournalist, and when you try to do that, there is a bunch of choice that you do. For example, you try to tell a story in one picture. You try to have kind of a wide angle, and you try to work with great depth of field to have everything sharp. So I decided, okay, forget about the story, forget about the people, I'm just going to shoot nature. And I'm going to take 80mm, which is a telephoto lens, and I'm going to shoot wide aperture, so with a very narrow depth of field. So this afternoon I went in the woods and I was looking for something massive with a bunch of details to color my frame. And when I came back, so at that time I was shooting digital. I did the black and white, and then I really felt, okay, now I have something. So I've been doing that for 20 years. And later on I moved to New York to move with my wife. And for 7 years I got actually stuck in the nature of photography, because the characteristic of the vegetation is very different. So I had trouble, and plus in New York it's really flat. Living in the countryside of Lyon, where you have a lot of hills, the light behaved in a very different way. So I was lost. And then I thought, you know what, maybe it makes more sense to shoot the street, to do street photography. But 7 years later, I actually discovered that you should always be careful about what makes sense when you try to have, create, actually, to stay away from everything that makes sense. So now, I would like to zoom out a little bit, because we are going to talk about landscape photography. But I would like to talk about the landscape of photography, meaning the context and having a bigger picture. So, for that, we are going to start with the definition of photography. Then we will talk about the landscape, environment, nature, the difference between those notions. And then I will end with a criticism of storytelling. So I think it's very important to define photography because photography is still very recent, and the theorization of photography is still an ongoing process, as opposed to music or painting that has everything that has to be said on painting was said for 1,000 years now. Photography being like a little bit more than 100 years old, there is still a lot to say about this craft. Also, there was a lot of brilliant mind doing some basic reasoning about photography. However, I thought they were always starting with a weak definition of photography. Roland Barthes, the most known of all, talked really nicely about photography, but the starting point is photography has this unique ability to represent reality, which is not wrong. It's a map might represent reality better than photography, more than the landscape, right? But that's actually not the topic, so we will go further on that. So, photography means writing with light. And the practice of photography lies between painting and writing. As a writer, so a writer has works, each of those works are known entity by everybody. But the meaning of each of those words can actually move depending the context and depending personal experience as well. So in photography we do the same, we take a table, a computer, a chair, we put it together and we build an image that is going to create something more complicated and something different. And it is similar to painting because the choice of the tool affects the outcome. So if you use oil painting, acrylic, depending the brush, if you use a spatula, all of that is going to affect the painting. The same goes with photography. If you use digital, film, all of that, all those choices does affect the final print. And now, what photography produces an image and a photograph. So, you know the difference between that? No? So, an image is a concept, an idea, and a photograph is an image on paper. So it's an object, something that you can touch, that you can feel with your finger. And I think it's very important to always keep that in mind because we are going to talk about thought and idea, but really photography, the end goal is paper, Plus, the word digital photography, if you take a picture and you leave it on a computer, you don't really have, as a photographer, control on how the audience is going to perceive the picture. It is going to be on an iPhone, which is small like this, a computer, a big TV, and without saying that you don't have one display that actually displays the same contrast or same color. So when you do a print, you have full control of the experience that you want to share. The size and the contrast not going to change. So now the intention in photography. So what we are trying to do is an average between visible reality and perception. And imagine scale. On one hand, we have 80% visible reality and 20% perception that would lie in the scientific category. At the other end of the scale, we have 20% reality and 80% perception. It falls in the category of art. I feel I'm doing a business course with the 80%.
Is this your definition or who's based on what?
No, actually, the average visible reality and perception it's a known thing. It's not nothing revolutionary, you know. So what I'm doing right now, it's really a rough, simplistic caricature of the landscape. However, it's important to have that in mind to understand what you're seeing, you know. And of course, it's not as simplistic as that. But you know, when you're going somewhere, you know, it's important to have an idea of the north, the south, the east, and the west. Even though you never think about that when you use your GPS, right? So that's the idea of that, actually. And then we have a subcategory in the art, two subcategories. I could go on and on about those subcategories, but we are going to stop that with that. It is the photo as a part of an art piece. So, for example, Sophie Kandé was known to use photography and text, and the images are not really meant to be used by themselves. It really works with the text. And then the other subcategory that I'm interested in is when you do a print, it's really that's all you need. You don't need even another picture. You don't need a text. You don't need anything. The photograph contains everything. And the good example of that is Hiroshi Sugimoto. I actually forgot to put images of him. But he was known for taking pictures of empty movie theater with long exposure. So, you know, you wouldn't see, with the blur motion, you wouldn't see the people in the movie theater. And his work is extremely minimalist. So, I know him for a very long time, but I never had the chance to actually see his work. I was respecting him because he shoots 8x10. Shooting 8x10 is always a challenge in itself. So for that, no problem. But then he was a little bit too minimalist. I thought, that's conceptual. It's not really my cup of tea. Until actually 3 years ago, where I started working at Griffin Editions. And we have actually one of my colleagues works exclusively for him. He does all the darkened print, giant darkened print for him. And when I saw the print, completely wavy, like unframed, I'm so lucky to see that every day actually. Then you understand this picture is all about the experience of the print itself. How to describe it? It's a magnificent black and white, extremely minimalist and very subtle at the same time. So there is no other way to understand this work but actually, looking at the real thing, the real print. Alright, so I lost where I was. So now I'd like to talk about the landscape, nature, and environment. I don't see myself like a landscape photographer, but we need to talk about landscape to define what it is, because that was the main, it is still the main aesthetic category to represent nature, so we can't avoid talking about that. So the definition of landscape, it's the observer that is at the same time the creator of scenic point of view. So landscape has no existence without the observer, as opposed to nature that exists by itself. As for the environment, I will get back to that later. So until the 19th century, the representation of nature, landscape, was mainly a background for human activities and religious beliefs. And it's only with the Impressionists that painters started to represent nature just for what it is. It was the main subject. And then, so with the social change, the two major wars, there was an urge to document from the photographer. So the practice of representing nature kind of faded away. So what I'm saying is actually a great writing from a Korean professor, art professor, Jung, who wrote an exquisite piece on photography as a preface for one of my friends, with a photographer, Go Sylvie. So I do agree with this theory, but I have another theory. Is that the first photograph was taken by Nicephore Nips in 1826. And the first public projection of film was in 1895, which is 69 years apart. And it's a very, very short time on the scale of the art history. If you think about it, between the first painting in the cave and the first time perspective was used, so I think that was in 1400 something, there was literally like 10,000 years between. And so perspective, you should see it as a technological invention on how to better represent reality. So something quite unique happened is that the invention of film is so concomitant to photography that really quickly film actually deeply affected the practice of photography. Usually that's the opposite. Photography was inspired by painting, but in that case, that was the opposite. And one of the reasons for that is that the film became like a huge success as a business, as an entertainment, and the best strategy to hook people is storytelling, which is used vastly in filmmaking, advertisement, because it's a great strategy to hook people on something, But the problem is not the storytelling as a strategy, is that the industry of filmmaking became so strong right from the beginning that it brought the supremacy to storytelling right from the beginning. And now you see the strategy of storytelling used for everything. Like 90% of the photo show that you can see in Manhattan, they are using storytelling. It's all about telling the story. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think this strategy has a limit when it's about to represent nature. Because in order to tell a story, you need character. So you can tell a story about animals just by putting human behavior into those animals. But how you do that with a piece of grass, just something like this, branches, that's not it makes sense with the root of the word. But now we use the word all the time as the environment, which is change the meaning. It's not exactly the same word anymore. So that's what I've been trying to do with my photography, is to try to find a different way to shake up the way we do images, you know. And while I spent those 7 years filming the city, I really learned about the American photographer, street photography. And among them, Mark Kuhn, who's the first to do that kind of pictures, meaning it's called invasive photography. So really, he would go really close to the people with the flash really in their face. And then more recently, Bruce Gibson, that I happen to see at least once a week because he works in our lab, with our lab. I think he has a show coming up, or maybe it's already up, but whatever. And also Ouija. So at the beginning, should you talk about Ouija because it's mainly known to shoot a dead corpse. So I'm not sure it qualifies as street photography, but as a matter of fact, he shot a lot of people alive. I had that great use of flash as well. And my favorite American photographer, my top 10 photographer, Lee Friedlander, who was at the beginning street photographer and who shamelessly used the shadow in photography, which I don't know if you remember, but when you were buying a film, you know, inside from Kodak, you would have some information, basic information about how to, you know, not center the horizon. I don't remember exactly. I think one of this information is don't get the sun behind you, do not have your shadow in the frame. So it proves not only it's possible, but it makes a photograph that works. So I brought all that language from the street, I brought it to the landscape photography. In that case, for example, I use the flash, and usually the flash is used to create separation. You underexpose the background, and then boom, you put a flash of light on your subject, and you create separation. In that case, I did the opposite. I compressed the perspective. On the picture on the left, between the trunk and the first trees, you have something like 40-50 feet. So by sending my flash to lead the trunk all the way to the background, I compress the perspective. And I'm having so much fun doing that. And here at the opposite, I create separation. For example, on the picture on the left, the sky is actually like this, kind of super bright, flat, not interesting. So I underexpose the sky, and by going full blast with the flash, with experience, you get to see which branches are going to be completely overexposed and glow like those ones, and then the tree right behind more in the middle gray, and then the sky is underexposed of 2 stops, just to have enough separation with the further branches that are pure black. Another thing I like to do is to actually blur the certain thing to smooth out the outline, and this way I can create just bring legibility to something that looks really chaotic, you know. On this picture that is right there, right behind you. So if you go closer, you see that the grass actually they're slightly blurred, you know. But if they were like completely sharp, you would be missing the real subject, which is the tree that goes in the background of. I made probably 20 prints of that picture to have. The tree really separating so tightly to the night, and you know, sorry, I'm lost in my slides. I didn't get track of the time.
That's okay.
Fine. Okay. So there is this picture that you see here. My favorite kind of picture was the process when you take picture. You take a lot of pictures, and after you have a group of pictures that are easy to choose. So you kind of really quick to say, okay, I keep this one, this one, garbage. And then some pictures take longer to actually know if they are a keeper. And this one took me a year and a half to really know with the absolutely certainty if I would keep it or not. And those are my favorite kind of process, because it means that this picture went actually beyond my vision knowledge. It was too advanced for myself, who are actually shooting bushes for 20 years. So that for me means extend the expression, you know. Maybe I'm going to work on and it was so challenging to print because usually I do way more contrasted pictures, but this one is kind of gray for me, and that kind of print is very sensitive to the light that you can have. If it becomes darker, you're not going to see the contrast the same. So I was so happy to pull out this print, you know. So when you're going to look at the print, don't hesitate to get close, to get far, because that's the thing I pride of myself. It's all the picture can work in small size and big size. Every time you're going to see something different depending the distance. So I mean, how long has it been? I've been talking. Sorry.
It's 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
2:11.
Okay. Let's go back a little bit. Alright, so those pictures are obviously a tribute to Lee Friedlander, but not only. Because the picture on the right, actually, it's quite often I would include my shadow, not for me, but simply for a basic reason is that sometimes the best light that I need is the light that is coming right behind me, actually. And you have no way of having your shadow. Especially with that kind of subject, it's very, actually, every time the angle of the light changes, you're going to change the contrast and everything, and you're going to have a picture that is completely different. So, what I like about this picture is that the same branch going from light and the shadow change completely of the nature of characteristic from the light and the shadow. And on the left, always for the same reason, always because I really like that light that comes right behind me. Not every time, but sometimes it does work that way. And here it was convenient because without my shadow, it would have been kind of empty, boring. I actually remember thinking, you know what, I can crop it a little bit, but then it would have been changed the dynamic of the picture. So, and this is nothing on the future work that I'm going to produce in the future. So this year I started shooting 4x5 because I'm a self-taught photographer. I do care about the craft so much, and I always felt, shooting for almost actually 40 years. It's too bad that you never shot large format. But the thing is, large format photography is kind of expensive, and it does imply to use a tripod, because all the square pictures that you see, I use like Hasselblad like this, and I have my powerful strobe that weigh maybe 10 pounds, and I'm like this, trying to aim the bushes. And because I find it so hard to find the friend that you have. I thought, that large format photography for me was a necessary step for the dream exhibit that I have in mind that might never occur, but still, I imply to do really large format. I'm really happy because my company just bought a huge printer, so now we can print even bigger than that.
What's the maximum
That's
length?
my plans,
What's the maximum length you can print?
So on paper like this, the max you can print is 16 inches. So that's 16 inches with the border, and the image is 15 inches. The printer that they bought, actually, it's a different thing. It's a UV printer, so you can print on all kinds of different material, and you can go up to 19 inches wide. So, but if you want to go that big, then you need to use 4x5. The medium format is too small for that. And that is one of the first pictures I took with this camera. And I just love it, And it's so stupid of me to do that, because a smart photographer, start heavy, and as he gets older, finish lighter. That problem, stamina to get the stuff around, Well, I do all the way to the opposite. I started with 35, medium, 4x5, and who knows, maybe I will end up with 11x14, large format camera. And here, so this picture is simply by, so one of the process, that's how I started showing bushes actually, is that what I discovered is when you have a bunch of lines going everywhere, so I invite you to do the experiment actually. You take a camera that has an optical viewfinder, and then you frame something extremely chaotic. You go right in the bushes like this. And then, just by keeping the same frame, you're going to move the focus away. And by doing that, you're going to discover that you have a bunch of different propositions, but very different. On the picture I took in France, sometimes I took 5 pictures, and they don't look at all the same thing, and yet that's the same frame. We saw enough picture on the screen. One more thing I wanted to say, because it's important to me. So Hyewon told me, I'm sorry, the humidity, like the paper wave, I'm so sorry, And I said, no, actually I love it. Because I'm really against the frame in photography, because photographers spend a lot of time, especially in matte paper, to choose the right paper. And when you put that under a glass, you lose all the experience of the photographer. Under a frame, you have, let's say, 20% of the photographer. I feel it's not fair to the audience, because they never really get the full experience. That's a personal opinion, but the boss of the company is not there, so I can say it. But I think that the print from Sugimoto looks much better when they are wavy, hanging, rather than after they flatten it, they send it somewhere to flatten perfectly flat, they mount it. But it's so flat, it looks like a TV almost. Yeah. When it's wavy, it's a sign that you have something alive that is not going to last forever, as a matter of fact. Those papers, they are going to take mold one day or take fire, I don't know. That's the beauty of paper, They're safely stored, they might survive my life, But if they are safely stored, it means that nobody saw them, So feel, touch it. Actually, that paper is really smooth. It's not the most interesting paper to touch, But feel free to, it's meant to be alive. So.
You're the first artist who speaks like this.
You have any questions? We can start
Two questions in terms of the nature of the paper.
I noticed once it's wrinkled, it stays that way. And there's another type of papers that kind of goes back to kind of flat once the weather gets dry.
Yeah.
I don't know what your experience is like with paper. And the second question is, in paintings and sculptures, and particularly painting, there's the acceptance of materiality and acknowledging painting as the flat, material. If you have any thoughts about the nature of materiality, maybe perhaps your acceptance of paper as organism has to do with that theory.
No.
Yeah.
Actually, that's very interesting. So as for the fact of how the paper is going to get, if it's going to get to the original fate, I don't know. Actually, the people who do the manufacture of the paper, they have a bunch of process to say, okay, that print is going to last 200 years old, but you can never really predict because they do that with a certain kind of light, certain kind of humidity, and I'm fine with that surprise, As for the reality, so actually it's an idea I'm very interested in because we should define reality. In photography, we should talk about the visible reality, at least the one that is seen by human eyes, right? Because some insects, they see UV, we don't, Some other animal, I think some fish in the deep sea, they see infrared, So photography has ability to capture reality, even on the scientific point of view, it doesn't really work for me. Now, for me, the reality, and I go back to paper, the only thing that we are absolutely sure in this world is that nothing lasts. And the paper doesn't last more than everyone. This building is not going to last. Cement actually degrades, over time. Plastic the same, it goes in microplastics, So, did I answer your question?
Yes.
The distinction between picturing something and taking a photograph or making a painting of it. In other words, if you were to talk to a painter sometimes, it's not a painting of, when you say a painting of, you immediately think of an object, a picture of you, a picture of your mother or something, a picture of your father. When you begin to see it as photography, and especially qua black and white, as soon as you have it colored, you're already moving into the reality of that which is being pictured. But if you do a black and white, you're already into a non-natural looking, because the way humans see things is through color, which is why the film, once you started to add sound, a soundtrack before the silent movies, then black and white movies, and then finally colored movies, it became almost reality, and as a result, with emotion, you have storytelling. But if you get away from picturing, then you have something purer and different.
Do you mean representing or duplicating in the picture?
No, it's just that how you look at it. I mean, if I see your father there, I'm looking at it as your father. If I look at it strictly as a photograph, it's the black and white, the shadows and the folds. I begin to look at it much more formally, as opposed to reality.
But one thing is that you talked about color photography as more real somehow. I don't really agree with that because so what I discovered just recently, it took me like literally 30 years to understand that. Basically, that's a question, and it's a very valid question. Why do you shoot black and white? And quite often, I would go completely blank, or my answer would be because I have treated that, love it, with all my the fiber of my being. I just love black and white. But what I discovered recently, so once a year, I try to shoot color. I do an attempt in shooting color. And for the first time of my life, last year, with the 4x5, by the way, I took a color picture that really moved me so much, and made me really understand the difference between two. Black and white photography is very good at, it's a very three-dimensional way of representing the world. You don't have that dimensionality in color. There is no way you can translate that work into color.
Right.
And color has more like a two-dimensional way. What I really did understand this time, I'm talking about photography, not painting, is that color photography works like a puzzle of color. When you take, when you look at a color picture in photography, it looks like all colors are equal to another color, even the dark color. In black and white, it's not the case. The white always is stronger than the dark. It does attract the eyes. That's the nature of the eye. So what I say is totally not relevant for painting, because in painting they have something that we don't in photograph. It's texture, and texture does interpret the color a lot. So in texture you can actually play, you can actually represent the depth and the color. The photography cannot do that. So I wouldn't say that more is one is more real than another. I would say that they each represent have a different ability. And as a matter of fact, my friend, can I say that? Can I talk about you, right? About you? No. I'm talking about your experience. So my friend, who is a very fine photographer, by the way, very good. He doesn't see color. So what's more real for him, color or black and white? We don't have all the same perception of color. We know also that the perception of tone gradation depends people. Like for example, the Eskimo in the North Pole, they are able to see actually 80 shades of white. But for normal white Caucasian eyes, we are more able to see contrast in the dark tone. And we are way far from seeing 80 gradation of white. So, reality, when we talk about reality, we should always talk about the reality from where, from who, So, did I answer your question? I mean, you always have good questions because your question raises so many other questions.
The color, if I understand, the color will never have the same effect in the white picture because the light, that's the important thing, because we don't see so much the light with the color picture because it's bland with watercolor but when you look at that, like you say, it's really, if we focus on that light, you discover so much. No, that's what you would find.
Yeah, I mean, so Patrick, you're a musician. Another analogy I could say is, you have music, and the piano is known to have almost all the ability to do a lot of music. That's why a lot of composers play on the piano. But does it mean that if you play, I don't know, flute, that's less of a music. No, that's a different kind of music, you know. So that's how I see black and white photography and color photography as the two different points of view.
I have a question. It's more like technical, I guess. Like when you're taking the photos, do you have something that you're focused on, like a main part, like that you take that you have like something that you're focused on, and then you manipulate it so that that kind of stands out more, or is it just you're just?
No, so it's you're too focused. Especially in the environment that I shoot, you can't take any picture. It's really crowded, it's overwhelming, it's hard to find any geometry in it. So the only way actually, the way I proceed, I have my camera, I just start working in it, you know. And, you know, over time you develop a kind of intuition, you know. And then I start framing, you know. I play with the focus, you know. If it doesn't work, rather than running to another spot, I actually take the time to, okay, let me see here, tack, explore. I really like to move a lot. I move a lot to
And the lighting too, you use that a lot, like to get the right look that you're looking for.
And basically, I'm actually really proud of that, is that I used the photographic tool to create something new. And that, unfortunately, something that was done, I don't remember the timeline, but at the beginning of photography, you had like two movements, the pictorialist and the people who wanted a picture that was more real, right? So the pictorialist, they would use the defect of the camera to have a painterly effect. And they were using like the photography, you know, with optical light, so it feels like abstract, but it's actually very tangible. So I use the photographic tool to create the image, not the subject to create the image. If I take a picture, that's actually the thing that bothers me when I shoot people, that I feel like a user. You know, I'm going to use your beautiful face, beautiful eyes to just attract the attention on me because I took the picture. You know, but like you know, it's I'm always happy when I take a good portrait, but I feel like a user. You know, and photographically speaking, I don't use. You know, it's like in cooking. You know those cooking shows. You know, they cook, and they do something. And one of the main criticisms that a chef would say. You didn't do any cooking. Anybody can put some lettuce, walnuts, that's it. But where is the cooking? Which is actually finding what you don't see is the thing in between your work. You're not working the ingredient, you're working the thing in between. And the photographer works the thing in between. You think
so like temperature and like all the different things that go into it. You're utilizing
exactly and the photographer, the more I shoot this one, I shoot more the space here than the actual piece of glass. Whenever I frame, rather than looking at the subject, even for commercial photography, by the way, I always look for the background. Because like putting something more or less in the center, you need to watch the image to do it. You know? So that's the whole context, that the relationship between, in my photography, what I really like to do, the work of a photographer, is to create a relationship between the foreground and the background. That's the cooking thing. But if I just shoot and you have a big documentary approach nowadays in photography, it's just about I'm shooting someone, okay, this guy has this story, patati patata. Well, it might be a good story, but first of all, that's the story of the guy. You pride yourself to be a writer, it needs to be well written, but in that case, you can't pride yourself in being a photographer. Because for me, the interesting thing would be to shoot someone with a background, something else, create a tension between things. So, and when you work, it's a miracle, you know? It's really hard to do, you know? That's really what I aim to.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's now, time is up, 2:30. If you have any other questions, could you please